Hello there. Okay. Welcome, Internet. I think we're live, and I can't believe I'm doing this. And the first thing I'm grappling with is the fact that I've got the sound. Okay. So I apologize for the extremely low production values. Ignoring everybody. Hi, Chris Hadley. Great to be here. It is. I did this because my friend Rob said, you gotta do it. My friend Rob Burnett, who I've known forever and who was my editor on this short film I just did, he's been doing this almost daily. And he loves it. And it is a business. He makes money off of it. And I'm like, well, that could be good. Because we know now that we're only, the only thing that matters if we're famous, and we're famous if we're on television. And that's what we've come to. So I'll try and find the just right amount of self-loathing that Letterman had that made him a success. Because too much and it's repugnant, but just enough and you feel kind of like, I'm with you guys. So there were a few things that people asked, because I need to, this doesn't come naturally to me to just talk constantly. I like to be the straight man because I have my dry wit. So let me see what some people wanted me to talk about, which I did no prep. Chris Hadley was okay. You are here. My insights on soundtrack producing. I'll get to that. Behind the scenes of putting together some of the releases, whatever it could be talked about legally. Well, I could talk about anything. So the first thing that okay, so Yavar asked, I hope I pronounced that right. Is there any, okay, so here's a question, Lucas. There were multiple superb volume 1 releases on the FSM label that never got a second volume because the label sadly ended. I'm thinking the Lalo Schifrin, is there any hope of second volumes being produced by you for one of the other still active labels, such as La La Land and Toronto or Quartet? The greatest sadness about FSM shutting down is that the releases from the MGM catalog have all but disappeared, and no one seems to be digging up obscure gems with anywhere near the regularity that you used to. The Quinn Martin collection aside, I just can't see superb stuff like Assignment Vienna happening today, which is a real shame. If you're willing to disclose them, what were some of the other interesting FSM projects that you had in the works, however along the way, but had to cancel due to ending the label? And is there still hope for any of them happening? There's probably no hope, but I can tell you why. So there were many reasons why I stopped doing the FSM CDs. And the biggest reason is just that I was tired of it, and it didn't have a future for what I really wanted to do, which was make movies and television shows and be a creator and not be the curator of people who had created stuff years ago. So that was the biggest reason. But probably the second biggest reason is it became very, very difficult. So when the economy crashed in 2007 and 2008, it became very difficult to sell like the sort of the B and C titles. When I started like in the late 90s, like you could put out a Goldsmith score or a Williams score and you'd sell 3,000 copies. And if you put out like a Jerry Fielding score or a George Delarue score, you'd sell 1,500 to 2,000. And then if you put out like Hugo Friedhofer or people who were really not as known, you could still sell 1,000, like easy. Not easy, but it was within the realm of possibility. And it kind of gradually, the market got kind of flooded and people got satiated with what they had and what they wanted. And then the economy crashed. And when it crashed, people couldn't afford to keep up with the sort of third and fourth and second tier stuff that they had been keeping up with to like keep a complete collection or to support the labels. And they had to go, look, I only want the things I really want, which are the Star Trek movies and the big genre scores. So it was hard, and it never came back all the way, because at the same time, there was generational change. There were collectors who died, and you would hear from like their families, I'm sorry, please, we need to cancel a subscription. He died, and we're like, oh, I'm very sorry. And then as a sort of then you realize that this person would spend $2,000 a year at your store, and if 5 of them died, then it's like 10 grand just taken away from your budget. So I don't mean to be kind of mercenary about that. So the support dried up. And then the other thing that really was just like, I can't deal with this anymore, was that the studios, I had most of my business coming from Warner Brothers. And there was one attorney in business affairs at Warner Brothers who was great to me. And I will name him because he deserves it. He's in private practice as an attorney now. His name's Keith Zajac, and you'll see his names in the special thanks list. And he was like my guy, and he was the head of business affairs for music at Warner Brothers for a long, long time. And sort of like a corporate thing happened, and he was let go, and he ended his run. And the new person was just much more precise in wanting to do the research. They just had a change in the corporate mentality. And for the longest time, I could just say, hey, how about this score? And they go, yeah, that sounds good. Silver Chalice, yeah, that's Warner Brothers movie, sure, fine. Don't worry about it. And then the new person was more like, Silver Chalice, what's that? Are you sure we own it? And everything became like you just had to go through all these steps, and it became very unpleasant. And I'm sure it was unpleasant for her too, because she doesn't want to deal with this junk. This stuff doesn't make any money. They make $2,500. That's not worth it. That's not worth her time. She's supposed to be doing Hans Zimmer's deal for a Batman movie. She's not supposed to be dealing with the Silver Chalice or whatever it was I asked for her to deal with. So it really had been the outlier, the way things had previously been. And then when this one personnel change happened, it really bottlenecked my ability to do these things. Now, at the same time, there had been a deal for it's so confusing. So the historical MGM movies were actually owned by Warner Brothers, and the historical United Artists movies were actually owned by MGM. So it's all confusing. But there had been a library of the MGM movies, which is like the catalog that has Logan's Run and Ben-Hur and Where Eagles Dare. And they had done this record deal with Rhino. And it had been going on since the mid-90s, and that's how we got Ben-Hur and Gone with the Wind the first time. And then as that kind of ran its course, there was another executive who's still at Warner Brothers that I will name because he was so good to me, and I'm such a fan, and he does great, great work in the Blu-rays and DVDs. And his name is George Feltenstein, and if you Google him, you'll see he turns up all the time in articles about classic films. And he's great, and he was such a champion and a friend, and he'd have me over to his house, and we'd look for paperwork. I mean, he was so of the mentality that, yes, we'll do all these, we'll do them right, we'll do them for the collectors, we'll do them for the fans. And he was more or less the production executive when the Warner Brothers owned MGM catalog was being licensed to me from Rhino. And then that deal expired and went back to Warner Brothers. So that bottleneck I had at Warner Brothers became an even bigger bottleneck. And it went from me being able to do like 10 or 15 of these a year to me being lucky to do 2 or 3. And the 2 or 3 I was doing were like, everything was a fight. Like, what's this unreleased track? Or what's this overlay? Or what, you vocals? Who sang the vocals? Well, I don't know. But they're not going to sue you. They never do. So it kind of went from loosey-goosey to like a huge pain in the ass. And at a certain point I said, nope, 250 albums, I'm done. So to Yavar's point, I had started on some more Bronislaw Kaper scores. I had started on some other I can't even remember. One of the things I started on is the Franz Waxman and Warner Brothers collection that then Entrada released. So some of these things, and then came Bronson, I was able to get out on another label, but I'm trying to decide as I speak and listen to my own voice, which is a peculiar experience, how much I should reveal to you. And I'll try and just be honest and say that Warner Brothers has this magnificent library of classic film scores, and the present administration from Warner Brothers is not set up to handle the licensing and the clearances and the approvals. They're just not set up. They don't have the manpower. It's not a corporate priority. And that's why the catalog releases from them are, you're seeing Superman come out and Harry Potter come out and Batman, things of that ilk that are large enough to justify in advance that they can then say, okay, we'll do this. But they're just not going to, like I had the complete, I had much more Previn scores. I was going to do a Previn at MGM collection. I had like the Catered Affair. I don't even remember. I mean, these are things that we wouldn't sell 400 copies. And I don't know what to say except that that is the truth. So it's not like the other labels aren't interested, but that the studio administration just changed. Okay, I'm back to the screen. Ariella Strauss, hi from Texas. Well, hello, Texas. Hello, Baton Rouge. Thank you. I could use film scores for my new book, but I need someone to make my book into a movie. Okay, I wish I could help. How do you choose your music to fit the movie's work? I don't quite understand what you're asking. And can you please ask a little bit more and then I'll get back to it. Skyfighter trailer looks great. Thank you. That is the my film project that I'm relentlessly pimping, this Indiegogo fundraiser. I put the, yes, I did put the link here. I'm guilty as charged. I'm shaking down the internet because I'm trying to pursue my dreams, and it's a very competitive environment. Why am I being all? I'm like being a bummer. I'm like the hat salesman who's thinking, you know, the story of the hat salesman where he's having a rough time selling hats, and he goes a long way in the train. He trudges up a hill to sell a hat to someone, and thinking all the while that they're not going to sell a hat and all the excuses. And he finally rings the door, and the guy comes and he goes, you know, fine, I won't sell you a hat. And it's like, whoa, you didn't even do your pitch. So I need to be happier. It's an ongoing, lifelong struggle because I'm actually, I think, pretty well balanced. Oh, hi, Saul. Years ago, I shot a documentary for Film Score Monthly online following you in your daily work. What aspect, if any, did I not capture about your personality? I don't remember. I'm sorry, Saul. I remember you doing that, but I don't remember the details. Okay, when you film movies, how does the music come along? How's it chosen? Okay, so this, I guess, is asking a question of me as a filmmaker. How is it chosen? And it's a very long answer. You hire a composer and you work with the composer to give you the music that you want, or if it's not original music, if you know the songs you want, you either pick them yourself or you hire a music supervisor who can say, how about this? If you're doing a disco scene, how about this piece or this piece or this piece? And then you deal with people who clear the rights. It's a long. How did Vin Scully do this for like 65 years or however long? I don't know how people talk nonstop. I am set up to have someone else in the booth and to be the straight man. So I'm, even when I'm reading these things out loud, I'm like, okay, well, I can either read them out loud or read them quicker but silently, and then it'll look like I'm not doing anything. So when you film movies, great, thanks, Alan. It's a long story. You choose, but there's a real answer. You choose music based on, okay, I need somebody to answer right now. When I lean back in this chair and it squeaks, can you hear it and is it annoying? Somebody please answer. You choose it based on the style of movie, based on the cultural reference points that you want, which is it banjos for, where is it set? When is it set? You know, what's the vibe? What's the audience? So what's the cultural, you can hear it not, okay, good. It's a longer answer that I think I'm gonna have to do another time. Let me go back to the FSM thread. Stories from the early FSM days. that's a long story. It does have an answer. So I created Film Score Monthly. I'll answer you in a minute. I created Film Score Monthly in 1990. It was a little newsletter, and it started because I wrote a letter to the editor in Starlog magazine looking for like pen pals, looking for people to write and talk about movie music, because this was 30 years ago and there was no internet. I think it was like a government thing, but it was not, there was no public internet, there was no World Wide Web, and you couldn't, there wasn't the kind of community that there is now to talk to people who love movies. You had to find them through like zines. They were called zines, fanzines. And like Star Trek fans had I used to subscribe to, there was something called Trek Talk, and I would get these, I can't remember, there were a bunch of these things, and I used to subscribe to them, and you would get in the mail like this little mimeograph thing, and it would have reviews from fans of the latest episodes of Star Trek: Next Generation, and that's how we communicated with each other. And there wasn't anything for movie music, so I was a very driven 16-year-old, but I was very, I was not happy. My parents divorced. Don't worry, it's not totally depressing. My parents divorced. My dad left when I was 13, I think, because I even blocked it out. I was so unhappy. And he moved 5 minutes away, but still, your parents divorced, and it's unpleasant. It's sad. And I, at the same time, I was in high school, and I never really had a lot of friends in school anyway, and it was always hard for me to make friends. And there were sort of all these introverted, sort of borderline on the spectrum reasons why I was lonely. And I connected with the movies. I connected with the stories. I connected with Star Trek. I connected with Star Wars. I connected with RoboCop. I mean, I connected with, you would say it's literature. It happened to be pop literature told through movies and television and comic books. I read Marvel comic books, and I love them. And I still do. So out of that environment of loneliness and boredom and sort of just itching to make a connection, I started Film Score Monthly, and I did it at the end of high school, and then I took it to college, and I did it while I was at college, and then I took it out here. So every phase of that has a different kind of production process. My mom might watch this, and she'd be like, "Oh no, he was so sad." And Mom, I'm fine. I love you. It's okay. It really wasn't that bad. It was a crazy time for all of us. No one was happy in that time. And I have video to prove it, because I have videos, home videos I shot of the house. My mom and I look at the house, like, oh God, it was like there's just like laundry piled up, and like the blinds are coming off the closet door. So I'll talk about that later if this is an ongoing thing that I do. Or I would prefer to I would write this stuff, but okay, I told myself don't be political because you don't want political arguments. But Robert Mueller just came out and he did like an 8-minute press conference because people didn't read his 400-page report. So I feel like we're now part of this problem society where I can write things and no one will ever read it. But for some reason, if I talk them on the internet, then it's like real, which is backwards to me, because I personally don't like podcasts, and I don't like having to sort through video and radio interviews, because I'd rather scan the text and get to the answer I actually care about. Eric, I'm so curious what message you retracted now. You asked if I remember what you asked. What is my opinion of current movie music? If I were a kid now, I don't know. And here's what I can tell you about the current state of movie music. First of all, I took a college course it was about film theory with a great professor, Jack Cameron, at Amherst College. And at one point, can't remember what we were talking about, but I raised my hand and I said, isn't it true that like movies today have too many close-ups because directors today grew up on TV and music videos, and so they're shooting for TV and not the big screen? And the professor thought a minute and he said, that may be true, but I try not to beat up on historical change. And I was like, whoa, that was like a life-changing thing, that I shouldn't be like a snotty, complaining kid, and that I should grow the hell up. So the point being is that things are different from when I was a kid. They say that it's like whatever touched your heart when you are in music or in movies. I don't forget the age, whether it's 8 or 11. Like that's really what imprints, and that's the kind of thing that you nostalgically are attracted to go back to. So I don't know if I was 11 or 12, if I would get into movie music, or if I'd be into video games, or if I would like scores. So I tend not to like film scores now, because I just find that they don't interest me musically, because it's a different. Here's what I would say. So at a certain point, and I can I can explain this more. So it used to be that like the qualifications for being a film composer were what you think. It'd be like the ability to write good film music. And then it changed, and now the two biggest qualifications for being a successful media composer are facility with the computers, with the technology, and then 2 is your social skills. So you have to be able to, in order to break in, unless you're already a rock star, you're starting out at these entry level projects where there's no money. So you need to be able to present music on the computers and do it out of the software. So you're looking at samplers and emulators and all these fake orchestras. So, and then also people are weeded out, because if they're socially unpleasant or touchy or just weird or kind of introverted, they're never going to make the connections. No one's going to say, I would say, but no one else would say, you're weird, but I think you're a genius, so I'm going to hire you to score my movie. The people that get the movies are the people who really have good interpersonal skills and can and I have to do something politicians should never do. You never rub your nose, because then someone freeze frames it like this and they make you look bad. But my nose was itching just so much. So what happened is that the ability to write for an orchestra especially became like skill 5 or 6. And in fact, I think that the ability to write for an orchestra is now a skill that people don't learn at all, because it's not necessary for them to learn it, because if they get to the level where they're actually able to use an orchestra, there are like 8 orchestrators who do that for them. So it's a different process. And I suspect, and I don't know if I'm true, but if it's true, but I suspect that you write different kinds of music when you're writing with the computer than if you're writing the way that our heroes wrote with pencil and paper. Now, I have mixed emotions about this, because when I'm writing anything really on the computer, I'm using a word processor program. And for screenplays, I'm using Final Draft, because I remember being a kid and trying to write a screenplay and trying to do it on a typewriter. And you spend like 60% of your time just like with these stupid tab stops and margins, and it's brutal. So you need the Final Draft software is phenomenal, and I'm sure that their competitors are just as good. So I really don't feel like it's for me to say, and like I'm all for Pro Tools and I'm all for digital filmmaking. Like I don't need to use 35mm. So the question is, if you're writing as an intellectual process, working it out and then putting it down, and you're either using the computer to put it down or you're using pencil and paper to put it down, but you're basically composing it and then documenting it in some way, is that going to make different music than if you're improvising with your fingers? Am I hearing your fingers talk instead of your brain think? And I think the answer is obviously yes. And the reason I think that is because when I hear the big orchestra scores for the big comic book movies, I hear that they're so overproduced, but they're so simple that they're basically people know they use strings percussively. They basically use everything percussively, and then they're sort of limited to either minor or major, or maybe a couple of more dissonant chords. But it doesn't seem to go beyond that. And they just don't have the breadth and the depth of the knowledge of how to make the orchestra give you all these different colors and emotional tones and flavors. And it's a negatively reinforcing process, because maybe they do, but nobody asks them for that. So if they're going to use all these sort of weird, there's so many reasons why they can't. So it's often backwards, that the things that sound good on the computer doesn't sound that good in the orchestra. But unfortunately, the things that sound great in the orchestra sound crappiest on the computer. Because especially when you deal with woodwinds and certain kinds of solos, they're really, really exposed even under the best of circumstances in the computer. And nobody wants to make a demo that the director's going to go, that sounds terrible. That sounds like a crappy synthesizer. Because they'll get fired or they'll get rejected. The people approving the music can't make the leap of faith that this crude mock-up, even though it sounds dreadful, is going to sound good when we get to the orchestra. It's just too much to learn. So it's easiest to do things that sound good, that sound like what they are. And they're often writing so fast that they're just sort of, you hear the left hand and you hear the right hand, and what you don't hear is all the shades of what an orchestra can really do. All the instrumental color. And you don't hear the scales. You just don't hear the diminished scale as much. I mean, you do if people know what it is, but whole tones, diminished scale, augmented chords. I'm being a little bit like, oh, did he learn these words in music school? Yes, I did, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. These things have the ability to create mood and color, and if you use them instrumentally in a different way, that's what really makes things lift and be really good. And that's when people want to hear them. It makes your ear want to go, I want to listen to that. And I also think there's a weird kind of demand somehow that if we have this 90-piece orchestra, I want to see all 90 pieces play. Because if you study the classic symphonic film scores, if you study John Williams film scores, there'll be a moment where it's just violins and cello and maybe a flute or maybe a little marimba. I mean, it can be very spare, and he saves the full orchestra for those moments when we need the full orchestra. And I just hear too much stuff. And I hear things. It's film music by necessity has to be, not simple is not the right word. Direct is the right word. It has to be very direct emotionally. But if it's too simple, it's amateurish. So I hear things that are compositionally amateurish that are so overproduced. And it's too bad, and I don't want to name names, and I wonder if some of the composers would agree with me. So I just don't like listening to it. It's not what I grew up on. I do like Hans Zimmer. I do like Inception and Interstellar, and his big scores are the real thing. It is true that he has a lot. When you get into these big studio movies, you've got 6 people doing additional music and 8 people doing orchestration, and it tends to come out kind of homogenized. I don't know. It's a long answer. Who else asked the question? Now I got to back up. Thank you for the people. I appreciate the people who stop by for this. It's very strange. Temping is killing everything. Past tense, man. Happened like 20 years ago. It's dead. They did their deed. It's gone, So someone asked where they can see Skyfighter, and the answer is the release date. There isn't one yet. We're trying to make a feature film, and we're trying to take the short film and use it to make the feature film. And we're trying to get I just burped, but I kept it silent. I'm trying to keep tried to get the short film into film festivals, and I can't put the short film on the internet because the film festivals won't take it. So I will get back to you on that. So, need a topic. Come on, guys. Woodwinds are banned these days. I don't know. I don't know. Prevalent MGM. Yeah, I don't know. It's all in my. I've got it in a hard drive, so at least it's saved more or less. I'm sorry. It kind of broke my heart, and I always felt a real duty to get this stuff released, and then it got to a big point where I was like, let someone else deal with this. Why do you think the current harmonic style? All right, first, Saul, how have your kids influenced your musical tastes? Not at all. I don't know if your mileage may vary. Although I was listening to the Day the Earth Stood Still the other day, and one of my 4-year-old daughters, I have twin daughters, comes and goes, "Daddy, that's scaring me." And so I said, "Okay, I'll turn it off." So how about that? Why do you think the current harmonic style is so simple? I suspect it's because people don't know any better, that they just really don't know how to do it. And I don't know. I really don't know. What made you decide to go into filmmaking? It's just, it's like, I don't know. It's like I hate it when people say I was born to do this, because Beto O'Rourke just said that, and he kind of sounded kind of obnoxious. But it's just something that I feel I've always felt driven to do something creative. And like when I was a little kid, I made a comic strip when I was 10 years old, and I used to post it in the hallway at my elementary school. So I've always just been creative, and films to me are everything I love. It's music, it's storytelling, it's imagery, and it's a process that is very complex and challenging. Yes, Yavar, Joe Sikoriak will be designing the Skyfighter Blu-ray DVD thing. Actually, it's because the old style is considered overblown. Yeah, that's actually true. The tastes have changed, and you can't score things the way they were scored unless it's a sort of like a retro piece. And I discovered that on my short, where I did a kind of bold synth score because I wanted to do something that was bold. And it was a little polarizing. And I had a few people say, I just hate that music. And I had some people say, I just love that music. And so the director, it happened to me where you get gun shy, where it's hard to commit to a choice that sort of guaranteed will have some people loving it and some people hating it. And so much easier just say, let's just pull that back. And so I don't have to worry, because there's just so much on the line for everything. Danny Elfman, the best right now, right? He's one of them. Always been a big fan. I think that Williams is still number one. Last 3 years, all the films I've been involved in. What, Ed, are you professionally involved? Ed, what do you do, please? Yep. I'm sorry, there's like a 3-second delay, and it feels quite annoying. Yeah, which one's Ed? Unless you're not allowed to say, or should I look you? Worked on Dunkirk. I like Dunkirk. Boss Baby, I didn't see that. In what capacity did you work on these, please? Well, I'll find something else to answer in the meantime. Additionals and programming. I don't know what that means, but that's cool. Oh, you mean additional music and synth programming? Okay, cool. But the CITL is simpler. Yes, it is. Yeah, everything's simple, But again, it's like my professor said. I'm sorry, that was obnoxious to me. I'm a copy editor at heart, and I can't help it. And now I realize that people listening to this after the fact are going to have no idea what I'm talking about. I've been doing this for 35 minutes. My friend Rob does this like 90 minutes a day, and I feel like I'm not going to make it to minute 45. I just want to go turn on the Red Sox game, take a nap. I guess I'm an introvert. When I was directing, I felt that way. By the end of the day, it's just like, you're just talking constantly, and I probably talk too much. So I love sci-fi. It's not my only favorite genre, but I always loved it. I always loved space stuff. Um, I don't know, guys. I need. Let me check. I'm sorry. Hang in there. All right, I'm back. You're doing. Oh, thank you, Chris. It's this is I got to call Rob and say the first is always the hardest. I guess so. It is amazing that the harmonic style has changed so much. Yeah. And for the better. I mean, I look back at like 70s TV music, and if it's not by the great ones, it's, Ed, I thought you just said Manimal is in. I was like, I'll buy it. Would I listen to a Manimal CD? I don't know. I remember the theme. Yeah, minimal. It is true. But, the weird thing about film scores is that they're minimal, not minimalist, but they're minimal and overscored at the same time. And when I hear things that are musically minimal, thank you, Saul, musically minimal and like overproduced, it's the opposite of what I actually like. I like things that are, that every note has a purpose and that are actually spare and more transparent. Nostalgia in film music, i.e. Godzilla. I don't understand the question, but I recognize the name, and hello, Ryan. I recognize. It's funny. I have I often remember these names of like when I used to get the subscription checks, going back in some cases like 30 years, and so sometimes on the phone I would take orders from people, and they'd start to give their address, and I'd be like, I know where you're from, 525 something street, and they're like, how'd you know that? It's like I just you're one of our peeps, man. So, so I would. Is there anything else about the record? Chris, I don't know if that's a criticism or a compliment, but in my defense, I'm not. I actually like public speaking. I think I just like public speaking where I get to take a breath every so often. I did enjoy being on Robservations, and that was more fun because Rob can just blast it and blast it and blast it, and then I could sort of be the straight man. Why do you think of Leith Stevens? Well, I know you mean what, but okay. I don't mean to bother you guys with my insecurity. Why do I think of Leith Stevens when I'm looking through the Paramount library trying to release something? That's why I think of him. But what do I think of him? I don't know. I like, War of the Worlds. I think I finally, when I turned 40, I knew the difference between Lee Harline and Leith Stevens. Okay, thanks, guys. I once saw Bobcat Goldthwait do a stand-up bit at my college, and it was a pretty small room, and we were barely. I was there because I was a fan, but there was barely anyone there. And he kind of took it personally. I think he was really upset that he schlepped all the way out to the Pioneer Valley, and he's in this small room that's got like 20 people, and he finally goes, "Why am I taking it on you? You guys are the ones who are here." And it's like, wow, yeah. So it also reminds me that one time John Milius said about The Wild Bunch, and about what a great movie is, when the character, the old Mexican guy in The Wild Bunch says, we all long to be a child again, maybe the worst of us most of all. And Milius said, you'll remember that line your whole life. And it's true. You really do. Yavar asked about Goldsmith premieres to make it out of the CBS archives. I don't know, because that stuff is so poorly organized at UCLA. I researched it as best I could. And there were some shows that they didn't want to deal with Half Gun Will Travel. I can't remember why. Probably because it was the ownership they had partners and the owners. And, these guys just don't want to look up the chain of title. Because a lot of the times that CBS, it's produced by CBS and owned by CBS and distributed by CBS, but other times it's some TV producer made it, And so really to license the score, they need to look up the deal between the producer's company and CBS. And it's like, who wants to, and they literally have to bring in boxes that from like the deep storage. And this happened to me. I was trying to do a CD of, I was trying to add Petrocelli, the Lala Schifrin score to fill out the Archer album. And they brought in the paperwork and it had mold. And there was a somehow corporately, they said, we are not allowed as employees to touch this box because it has mold. So we can't look up Petrocelli. And that was another thing. I was like, I quit. Okay. Bye film music. I just couldn't take it anymore. Am I part? I guess I'm part of the post-geek singularity. That's Rob's phrase, and he's got a Facebook group. But how can I not claim to be a part of that? Is some of the best scoring can now be found in television? It's possible that this Chernobyl music is outstanding. And I just saw a bit of a podcast with Hildur, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce her last name. I'm sure it's simple once I hear somebody else do it. But that entire score is musique concrète, literally, in that it's concrete. She went to a power plant like in Lithuania, and they did all these field recordings with her and her team. And then they made the score for Chernobyl out of the field recordings. I liked the Game of Thrones music. I don't tend to listen to it. I liked the Westworld score. There are a bunch of other TV scores that I really liked, and now I can't remember a single one. Derek asked, did you ever finish importing all your CDs into the computer and store your? I did. Before my kids were born, I did some major house cleaning because we had no room for the kids' room. So I took my entire CD collection and ripped it into iTunes, and I boxed up the CDs and my CD collection. The guys at La La Land let me keep it there for a long time, and now it's under my stairs. It's in the house, but I don't go into the boxes because I don't have need to. I did that, and the other thing I did is I scanned my paperwork for all the CD productions. I took every folder, every CD had a folder, and I scanned it. There's a scanner that you guys can't see, it's right there, and I just fed it through the scanner, and now I have all the paperwork, and I recycled all the paperwork because it was an outrageous number of boxes. I didn't want to pay to store it anymore. If the title, yes, thank you, Conchita. I will be properly hashtagging things and trying to get more viewers. This was just sort of a test to see if anybody would come and what the experience would be like for me. It's using a lot of wind power for me to keep talking like this. So Alan Smith Emerson asks, Mark Venture mentioned the prohibitive cost of resupplying CD batches. Yeah, that, and how there's only one major CD manufacturer in the US. Could this contribute to the eventual downfall of score CDs? It seriously could. I know that the existing labels, and it's a real problem that these pressing plants are, there's only like one left and they're overbooked. And I'm glad I don't really have to deal with it, but it's weird. Yeah, CDs could be ending soon. I'm sure that's something that will upset a lot of people. Ed Buller asks, I think there's a harmonic style from that period that like Goldsmith had the Satan Bug. Yeah, they used to write serial, Satan Bug, I think, is a tone row. Literally, he made a tone row, and Planet of the Apes is serial. And that kind of language doesn't get used, but it could be. All it takes is one person to bring things back. And there's certain things that are more, have a certain artifice to it that it sounds dated, but there are certain things that don't. And all it takes is one person to do it. Like I love the score to Under the Skin by, I don't know if it's pronounced Mika or Micah Levy, but I love her work. And it really only takes one person to come back, or the way It Follows had this retro synth score and Stranger Things, and then all of a sudden, that's just how shallow and I think not forward-thinking people are, that they just don't try new things. You gotta it's an opportunity to be cool, to do something new. I'm just reading. If you continue this, start with a broad theme. Yeah, if I do, I would plan the programming more thoughtfully than I did today. Today was just sort of spur of the moment. Oh, I remember what I did today because I was hoping people would feel inclined to go to my Indiegogo page and give me $5 because I'm just trying to hang on, man, and women, men and women out there. So, guys, I've made it to 4:46, and I think I'm going to wrap things up here. And thank you so much for visiting. If there's anything else, put it in the chat right now, and I'll try to get to it. And no, thank you guys. Will we ever be able to archive liner notes digitally, or is there a legal aspect prohibiting it? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have PDFs of all my booklets, and I wish I could just give them away. I probably could. It's not. It would be technically not allowed because it has all the movie artwork. It's unfortunately a thing, and it's unfortunate. I guess we'd have to. I guess there's no reason we couldn't just extract the liner notes and just print the text only, but it's just a ton of work, and it takes a long time. And I personally don't have that time. Alan Smith Emerson says, I don't believe in the pendulum theory that the gold and silver age style will return. No, it's not going to return, but the aspects of it get reinterpreted by a new generation. And that's always true, and it always will be true. Okay, fellas, my dear friends, thank you for being here. Yavar, about CBS, it's as far as I know, all of the studios right now, they are not set up to research very obscure TV music, and you have to offer so much money as a guarantee, like $5 grand or even 10 grand, that you know you'll never make it back. So it's just unfortunately where we're at, but things come and go. I mean, it could turn around. That's how it was when I was in the early 90s, and then there was a period of time when they were set up and they hired, like MGM had a person who was solely there to clear old film scores, and they did a ton of film scores. Chris Hadley, I would love to be, okay, I would be on anybody's podcast. I'll do press for me or anything I've ever done. Right now it's like, how can I get off this internet show, because I'm tired of moving my mouth, but I will talk on anybody's show about anything you want to know. And I love to promote my own project because I'm proud of it, and I'm proud of the work we did together, and I want people to see it. So everybody, just email me. I'm the easiest person to reach. It's Lucas with a K at filmscoremonthly.com. And I would love to be on any film music podcast. I don't know what's the score. I would happy to be on, and I do better that way if I'm answering questions than as if I'm thinking the questions and the answer at the same time. So what was I going to say? There's I thought of something funny. I briefly found myself saying ask, like putting a little bit of Boston into it. And now here's something you guys may never know, or you may never learn, but now you're going to learn it and you'll be like, whoa. Okay, so think clearly to the classic Star Trek and Leonard Nimoy and the way he talks, his accent. He has a little bit of an accent that you might think is like him being kind of patrician, where he says, I shan't ask you again, or I can't do that, or I won't ask you one more time. It's not a Vulcan accent, it's a Boston accent, because Leonard Nimoy is from Boston. And that's why Spock talks the way he talks. And I thought that was so cool once I figured it out. So I do want to end by saying that I've really lived the most charmed life and have the most charmed career, being able to do these projects that bring me so much pleasure, and it always brings me so much pleasure to make you guys happy. And now with the money I've raised online to make my film project, I've always depended on the kindness of strangers, and many of you have become more than strangers, and you've always been so very kind, and I've always tried to be good to you too. So we'll sort of end on that Mr. Rogers note, and thanks for being here, and I'm going to sign off. Thanks, guys. Bye. And I have no idea how to end it. I have to go to Chrome. Okay. I'm going to Chrome. End stream. Okay. Bye-bye, guys. Thank you very much.